beautiful laminated pieces of stuff that I glance at and throw in the trash. I mean, mostly, which is a darn shame. If I had time, I might like to look at all of that. But advertising is playing an increasingly important role because people believe that they have to do that in order to get students, get funds, get rankings, get research dollars. And I suspect that many are successful in doing that. The best advertising for an institution, though, remains, in my opinion, and consistently has been, satisfied alumni. Because I think that when we graduate people who believe that they have had the kind of payoff on the values proposition that I've been talking about, they won't be quiet about it. They'll share that information with other people. And on a good day, they may even share some of it back with you in terms of a donation. But they will share it with others because they take a sense of ownership in that relationship, and they can relate to it personally rather than impersonally, simply to an institution. In other words, when I talk to my alums and they tell me what they remember most about the institution, they don't describe the buildings, they don't describe the grounds, at least not initially. They'll make jokes about it later on because it was kind of a muddy plain for a long time. Okay, but they'll talk about the people they met, about the teachers they had. They'll talk about an administrator who helped them with some advice. They'll talk about their classmates with whom they had good discussions, et cetera. And you know that that's how they talk to their friends. So, you know, I believe that advertisements and advertising has a realistic and a positive role in education, but I think it's probably overplayed for what it can really do. The real power of an institution comes from its academic reputation, and that's only earned over time and through people. Yes, sir.
It was a great speech, Mr. President. In the beginning of your speech, you talk about mission as well as the intention. So, which one adds more value, especially public institutions versus independent?
Yes, I think they're different. I think and thank you for noting that distinction. I think that a public institution must depend on its mission to have its value proposition work. I think an independent institution, while its mission is the articulation, depends greatly upon the intention of why the place was founded. And when you lose sight of that, then you change the kind of institution you are. You can still be an independent institution, but you've changed it. This is the argument that Marsden and his colleagues make in their work about the change from religious to secular institutions. By the way, the name of his book is The Soul of the University. I realized when I finished speaking that I'd forgotten to give you the title of his book. And what they're trying to say is that if you change the intention, even without intending to do that, if you change the intention, then you've changed the character of the institution. And institutional character is what constitutes this fit and feel that I was talking about. A public institution, a publicly supported institution, can make character come out of mission, absolutely. One of my colleagues who was an ACE fellow with me, who used to be the chancellor of the University of Wisconsin at La Crosse and now is the president of the Fielding Institute in California, a person who's worked as a president both in the public and in the private sector, gave her inaugural address at UW La Crosse, a public institution, on values. That was her entire message to the community that day, was the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse is going to deliver value to its constituents, okay? And she translated value into an education broadly dispersed among a regional community that needs a general liberal arts education. The intention of the state in founding UW-La Crosse was not to give value. It was to provide that generalized education to that region. She had the foresight and the wisdom to take that intention and to articulate it through a mission that spoke directly to the people. I think she did. She made a great speech. She was a wonderful president for that institution, and she understood how to make that jump. Those of us in the independent sector have to take the intentions of our founders, okay, and those who have sustained the university over time, our history, and we have to articulate it in a mission that will resonate in the whole group of educational institutions with whom we both collaborate and compete. Thank you for that good question. Yes, ma'am.
You brought up the rankings a little while
Yes.
ago and the advertising that goes on to peer institutions to try to get their own rankings up. Do you see that as something that is inevitable, or will people just finally say enough already?
Both. Both. I think it is inevitable given the kind of consumerism that is such an important aspect of our society. And people who consume want to have consumer reports. I mean, basically, what U.S. News and World Report did is they took consumer reports and said, that was a great idea for selling magazines. Let's do it and sell some magazines. That's perhaps not fair. That might be a little bit too harsh. But I think, but it's worked. And I think that will continue to work as long as our society remains a consumer-oriented society, and as long, frankly, as education is costly. And those of us in the independent sector, I mean, are really under the gun right now in Congress, in the court of public opinion, and everywhere else with respect to our costs. And rightly so. We should be held accountable to that. And so I think the rankings are inevitable. Is there a time when people have had enough? Yes, and we're getting close to it. I understand it. You know, when you're trying to do a whole college, et cetera, et cetera. There are some places where it really gets, in my opinion, silly. And one of those places is in law schools. I have this special thing about law schools, but that's another day and another speech. But I was talking to the dean of our law school. I won't name which institution I was at. And we were talking about rankings. And I said, I know how to solve the rankings issue. It's simple. All you do, you cut the rankings in half, and somebody has to be in the lower half. Just write a letter to everybody in the lower half and say, here's how to get out of the lower half of the rankings. Don't send the information in, okay? Just don't send it, okay? There's no rule that says you won't lose your accreditation. Just don't send it. And you're no longer in the lower half. The next year, somebody else is in the lower half. And you write them a letter and say, here's how to get out of the lower half. Don't send the stuff in. And you just do that for about 5 years, okay? And then you've got 2 institutions that are being ranked, and it's over. Well, that was special pleading, but I do think there are some areas in which it is silly, and there are some places now that simply will not send it in. A place like U.S. News and World Report will always have the ability to get the information. There's enough places we have to disclose publicly now that they can get that. It's in the law schools have a separate survey, which is why you don't have to send it in and you could get away with that. But I do think it's inevitable.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here.